Bore da I bawb i'r sesiwn uwch gynhadledd gyfalwyr blynyddol hon, sy'n gael ei chynnal gan Gyfalwyr Cymru ar gyfer gyfalwyr di-dal ledled Cymru a'i hariannu gan Llywodraeth Cymru.
Mae heddiw'n nodi diwedd I uwch gynhadledd gyfalwy llwyddiannus arall, sydd wedi bod yn wythnos addysgiadol I bawb sydd wedi cymryd rhan. In 2022, I was proud to launch the £500 support payment to unpaid carers in receipt of carers allowance, with 77% of those eligible making a successful claim. I also announced £4.5 million over 3 years for the Carers Support Fund. The fund is now open, allowing unpaid carers to apply for money to help with food shopping, bills, and to access ongoing advice and support to manage their caring role. Another key project that took place in 2022 and gathered momentum this year is the Short Breaks Fund. £9 million of funding over 3 years will ensure we increase opportunities for unpaid carers to take a break and prioritise their own needs and well-being. I thank Carers Wales for organising this event and all of you for taking the time to be at this session and give your thoughts to these important discussions. I'm looking forward to receiving feedback on the key points raised during this event to inform our ongoing work to support all unpaid carers in Wales.
So, Alwyn, what do you think local authorities should do to be more proactive to ensure carers are able to access that very important information and advice relevant to their caring roles?
I think there's probably quite a lot of things that we as local authorities can do to make it easier for carers to access that information. I think you've used the word proactive there in terms of the question. I think we need to be proactive in publicising the information that we have available. I think as local authorities, we really need to make sure that every contact counts. We hear that quite a lot, but when we come into contact, both ourselves, other partners as well, come into contact with carers, and I use that term in the sense that not everyone will recognise themselves as carers, but we need to make sure that those conversations, whether they be an assessment or it be some other form of contact, is a really rich conversation. And I guess the final point from me is we need to make sure our staff are well trained, that they do recognise that this is not simple as someone saying, yes, I am a carer, I'm not a carer, that actually it's a little bit more subtle than that. And actually we do need to make sure that every conversation we have is really, really valuable.
What do you think, Helen, needs to happen within the health services so that they can actually better identify carers at that very first point of contact and ensure that those carers, you know, have the information that they need to care safely and confidently?
I think there's lots of different points to that question. The first would be GPs recognising and noting that unpaid carers on their records, and I think we've got a real advantage having got carers to be in priority 6 of the COVID vaccine. There's an opportunity there that we don't want to miss, that they've had to register, if you like, as unpaid carers. So let's keep that data and let's support people, and let's use that to build on that GPs recognise unpaid carers and have a note that they are caring and can support them and recognise that. Hospital discharge is another key point. It's absolutely essential that carers are consulted at the point of hospital discharge. It's a legal requirement, but more importantly, it just makes sense to ensure that they are able to care. I think there's another area that we might look at. We know that 1 in 3 NHS staff themselves are unpaid carer, and that's a higher percentage than in the general population. 1 in 5 to 1 in 7 working population generally are unpaid carers. Now that to me is a great opportunity, because if the NHS can look at and recognise the unpaid carers within its own workforce, they're much more likely to recognise an unpaid carer as they walk through the door of an NHS property. And the last thing that I'll say, I don't want to overplay my part here, is that I think, is it 2/5 of carers are currently waiting for their own care. And they've been waiting over a year for their own care. Now that suggests to me again that they may not be able to care safely and well, because they themselves are struggling with their own health and well-being because of the backlog for unpaid carers. So that for me is a big anxiety, and something that kind of needs to be addressed in that whole kind of NHS health provision and support of unpaid carers if they are to support people safely and well.
How do you think the Welsh Local Government Association can ensure a more consistent approach to carers' needs assessments across Wales, including the content of those assessments and the timeframes about providing the assessment and the final copy of that assessment?
The WLGA meet regularly as a group of cabinet members, and there's also sort of subgroups of social security cabinet members. So we've got opportunity to speak with all members, all cabinet members and social services throughout Wales. We have regular conversations with the ministers, both health and social services, and so the spokespersons can go to those meetings. We write to them regularly. So there's no reason really why we couldn't have a consistent approach. People not getting responses back and waiting 12 weeks is unacceptable. We'd agree that. And you know, something should be done about that. So there should be a standardization of when we can get back to people.
What do you think the Ombudsman's office can do to ensure that complaints are dealt with in a timely manner, and ensure the carers are given the support that they need through advocacy, information and advice, etc., to take that complaint forward? And a supplementary question, has the Ombudsman got the power to audit local authority, local health board complaints processes to actually be able to hold them to account in those processes they manage?
So the first thing I would say in the comment there about, you know, will it make a difference if I bring a complaint forward? Well, yes, it will. It can make a big difference. And please do bring those complaints forward if you're struggling with something. Our core purpose is to deal with complaints where people feel that public services have failed them. And that includes if they feel that their complaint hasn't been handled properly. The second thing then is about our proactive powers. And I think perhaps this is the bit that people don't know or don't realise quite so much that the Ombudsman's office can do. So our proactive powers mean that we are actually the Complaint Standards Authority for devolved public services in Wales. So what that means is we've got the authority and we have issued a model complaints procedure. We do a lot of training with public bodies about what good complaint handling looks like and what that should look like. And most importantly, we're now able to publish on an annual basis data about complaint handling in the public sector. We do have powers, but because of that work, I issue an annual letter for each council and each local health board in Wales. We tend to do that at the end of the summer. And that looks at their annual performance. That letter goes to the leader or chief exec of local authorities and the same, you know, sort of level of senior leaders within the health sector. And they are asked to and required to take that to their audit and governance committees. There are, you know, that is public data. The final aspect then of our proactive powers is the ability to undertake our own investigations. So what that means, we don't have to wait for a complaint to come in about something. We can actually say there's an area of public service that we're concerned about, an area we want to have a deeper look at to see how we can identify improvements and work with public services to improve the situation.
So I'd like to come to Gemma next in relation to STICE, which will be the new Health and Social Care Citizens Voice Body from April, which sort of amalgamates all the current community health councils into one body. How will the new Citizens Voice Body STICE ensure that the public and carers are aware of its role and functions? And how will it actually evaluate its performance? And will there be any scrutiny of its functions moving forward?
SLICE will operate a national advocacy service that can support people during the complaints process, which is entirely client-led. Whilst we're working within a framework of 2 complaints processes, one for the NHS complaints procedure and putting things right, and one within the local authority sector for social care, all which would have a recourse to the Ombudsman if needed in the future. And we would support a client from either the initial stages of them wanting to put a concern together, thinking about what they'd like to say, what they'd like to achieve through the complaints process, and being with them to give them the options for them to make the decisions on how best to take those forward. In supporting the NHS and local authorities to make people aware of us, it is a duty of local authorities and the NHS to promote the services of LIFES. And whilst we wouldn't wish to always fall back on the fact that it is a legal duty, the key thing to encourage that promotion is our relationship and partnership building. In terms of how we will quality assure our activities in the future, we know that we will have a governance framework set for the National Board. It will have internal and external audit and review plans. So we would internally and externally quality assure our functions, our efficiency and our resources. But we'll also be transparent in how we publish and report on our activities from day to day.
How do you think local authorities and Welsh Government can ensure that all their communications and information services are effectively reaching out to all these carers?
I think in very simple terms, the communication we make needs to be able to reflect the characteristics of those individual communities. So I guess one standard message, whether it be a leaflet or communication, is not necessarily one that is going to fit all. So we need to target our communications in such a way that it is able to reflect the characteristics of those individual communities, both in terms of visually how they look, but also how, whether that be in language or other means, we actually are able to communicate those messages. But we also need to make sure we actually access communities directly in a comfortable space for those communities, and being able to have a conversation around whether the term care is the right one, or have conversations about their roles within that communities and how best to feed information and support into that community in such a way that it is actually valuable. And I guess the final point, and actually it sort of summarises everything that's been said to date, is we do need to work very hard to understand the various communities within our local areas, whether they be ethnic communities or others based upon other aspects. So we need to understand those communities and how the role of carers are perceived within that community. So one commitment, as soon as possible actually, and we've already started work on that, is that we do actually get carer representation on that group. We recognise it probably won't be a representative from every single community, but it will be a start.
Definitely on the carers assessment. I will speak at the WLJ about maybe changing the name and see if we can get a name change, and that we can get some sort of timelines that would work for people, or a different way of doing it.
CHC's handing over to Llais, our commitment will be that we actively seek, we listen and we act when we hear about things, and the new body will give us an opportunity to map voices across Wales and be able to identify gaps and needs in different pockets of the community.
On the equality impact assessment, where Gemma was referring to the 9 protected characteristics, rather than have a bespoke carer impact assessment, I would like caring to be the 10th protected characteristic. So that would be my biggest goal. I'm very heartened to hear what people have said today, that they will take things back and make a difference. And for me, actually doing something on the ground is what's important. So a very heartening morning to listen to you today. Thank you very much.
Just a massive thanks to all of you for actually taking the time to come along to this plenary session. Diolch yn fawr.